Welcome to the game. This is the show where we go play by play analyzing the game of politics. Today we have a packed lineup of topics that are shaping the headlines here at home and abroad. First, we head to Chicago, where it's ground zero, where Donald Trump has said that he is going to take the next round of National Guards to fight what he says are rising crime numbers in the city of Chicago, but the mayor is trying to stand against the National Guard and Donald Trump in this case. Then things are escalating when it comes to cartels. Yesterday, Donald Trump took a decisive decision to take out 11 terrorists that were off the shore of Venezuela. At the same time, Marco Rubio was in Mexico talking to the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, about several items, including tariffs, but also about the battle against drug trafficking from Mexico into the United States. We're also going to be going and turning to Louisiana, where Planned Parenthood has announced that they are pulling out of the state. This is a trend that we've actually seen in several other states as well. Now, joining me to discuss these topics, coming in from Arizona, we have Monet Banks. Monet Banks is a conservative analyst. She is also the director of one of the largest center-right Latino organizations in Arizona and across the country. She's also the Mrs. Arizona American. Monet, thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And also coming in from Texas, we have Angelina Tamez. Angelina is also a conservative political analyst. She is a campaign strategist, and she is also the chairwoman of a regional chamber of commerce in South Texas. Angelina, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. I appreciate you sincerely.
All right, let's start off with Chicago. Chicago has really become ground zero when it comes to this topic of the National Guard. This all started about 30 days ago when Donald Trump said that he was not only calling the National Guard or activating the National Guard in D.C., but that he was also taking control of the local police in D.C. This was done quite easily because in D.C., there is a clause, there is a law that gives the president a jurisdiction to be able to do this. D.C. is not a state, it is a district, and it grants the president this jurisdiction. A lot of the debate that we're seeing now is because there are critics who are saying that the president cannot do this in other states or in other cities. The president, however, is also looking at other laws and other acts that give him the authority to temporarily use the National Guard and activate the National Guards in cities when there is an extraordinary situation or crisis in this place. Angelina, I want to start with you. I want to analyze a little bit of these last 30 days in D.C. first. Many of the stats that the administration is putting forward is they've seen a drastic drop in crime in D.C. since the president has taken these steps. There's been a drastic change in these 30 days. This is part of the reason why the president says he wants to take this model to other cities. So my question to you is, one, do you believe these stats? Do you think it's worked in D.C.? And second, when it comes to this debate of does the president have the authority to do these in other states, what's your opinion here?
Well, absolutely, it's necessary. Strong, decisive action does promote law and order. So, going back to the neighborhood that I grew up in, the women who stayed usually shared the same fates: incarcerated, murdered, or forgotten, because my street had a history of gang and drug violence. It was truly an addict's paradise. And that's why I'm one of the most tough on crime individuals you may ever come across, because I've seen what happens when crime runs unchecked. And here's the bottom line is that criminals don't take soft penalties easily. Probation and fines, they don't stop repeat offenders. Change only comes when they are humbled through either real rehabilitation or prison time. And when that happens, entire neighborhoods benefit because parents feel safer. Kids can play outside, women feel safe walking down the street. Everyone wins. So when President Trump talks about using the National Guard to restore order, it's not a permanent takeover like so many of these critics are making it perceive as. No, it's a temporary measure just to get structure and safety back in place, which I wholeheartedly endorse. Critics are going to say, no, Mr. President, stay out of Chicago. It's unlawful. But let's be honest, Chicago needs help. My family's from there. My tios, they still live there. And for 13 years straight, Chicago has led the nation in murders. Out of Chicago's 150,000 reported crimes since January 1st, arrests were made in only approximately 16% of them. So what does that mean? It means that 84% of criminals face zero real consequence. And what's the result? The result is that Chicago now has more illegal guns recovered than New York and Los Angeles combined. So, families raising children, I can imagine they do support Trump's America First approach. It sends out a loud, clear message that career criminals can no longer have this free ride. And if someone would rather disagree and just let Chicago burn and then accept help, they're part of the problem.
Monet, and I want to ask you a little bit about the nuances on the politics of this. It does seem like there's really a little bit of two sides. I don't see this urgency from the cities that have been called out by Donald Trump. He's focused on Baltimore. He's focused on Chicago. He's focused on LA. I haven't heard sort of an urgency from these mayors of wanting to collaborate with the president. Again, they're focusing on their two main points that the mayors are saying is one, crime is down, right? They're saying this isn't necessary because crime has gone down, and second, the president doesn't have the jurisdiction. Why don't these mayors, one, yes, let's say crime is down. It seems statistically some of the crime is down. That doesn't mean that crime isn't there. That doesn't mean that people haven't been shot. That means that people aren't dealing with car robberies, with hijacking, etc. Crime is still existent in these areas. And let's say the president doesn't have the jurisdiction, but they can invite them. The National Guard can be activated in collaboration with governors and with mayors. Why do you think the Democrats are so one-sided in this issue?
Yeah, so I think we have to get back to the root of the issue, which is can he or should he? Can the president do this and should he? And I think that what people are recognizing and these Democratic mayors don't want to address is that they have failed. When you look at what happened in LA, they did not have control of the riots. When you look at what has happened in Chicago, Brandon Mayor Johnson has horrible approval ratings. I think his approval ratings right now are 26%. And so I think he's just, trying to throw a Hail Mary. The problem, though, is that crime is rampant in these cities. I think over Labor Day weekend, 47 people were shot, 7 were killed. I mean, that's horrible. Now, it is the responsibility of the mayor, it's the responsibility of these governors to take action. If they were doing their jobs, we would not have to have a conversation about the National Guard. However, I think Trump needs to be very careful in this area, though, because I'm a conservative and I believe in limited government. It does bother me that he says things like, we're going in. I think that any president that says that in regards to the military with its citizens, that's tricky, right? So, and the reason that these Democrats are saying he doesn't have the right to do this or the legal grounds is because of the Posse Comitatus Act. And again, there's very nuanced, which is if Trump is protecting federal buildings and agents, he absolutely has the right to use the National Guard to do this. And it sounds like that's the plan, right? Is with these ICE agents, with the federal buildings, that he wants to go in and make sure that they're protected and that these ICE agents can do their jobs. However, outside of that, which is what the ruling was in California with the judge regarding the LA riots, these federal agents or the National Guard cannot do more than that. It's very clear in the law that they need to be there to protect federal agents. Now, if the state government decides that it wants to deploy its National Guard, they can absolutely do that. So again, I think it goes back to people need to sit down and go, well, can he or should he? And I think with some of the things that have already been discussed, maybe he should. But we also need to make sure that we're checking and watching the executive branch and making sure that it's not overreaching its powers. Just because we need to do this right now and get control of our cities, what does that mean long term for the power of the executive branch?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of valid points there, Monet, and it brings me to one of the questions that I did have. So I'm going to come to you, Angelina. There is, if we were to play devil's advocate on some of these, the president is what's kind of fascinating about what's going on is he is taking the interpretation of the law and challenging what have been per se norms, right? And these are norms just because it's what other presidents have done. That doesn't mean that these are norms established by judges or that they've been challenged in courts. It just means that the president is taking them and sort of challenging them a step further. So my question is going to be two-part. One, the president is taking it further than we've seen many other presidents take it. Is there a level of comfortability that then when it's President, let's say AOC, when it's President Kamala Harris, when it's President Gavin Newsom, and these presidents has already been sent by Trump, are conservatives going to be okay with, again, a President Gavin Newsom going into Texas and saying, we're going to take control of the National Guard here. We're going to come into this neighborhood. And a two-part question, if I may. The other aspect is the president has seemed to zero in on blue cities, right? Memphis in Tennessee is also has a high rate. It might not have the same numbers because Chicago's a bigger city. There's also, if I'm not mistaken, New Orleans in Louisiana. There are several more sort of red states that the president hasn't really leaned into. So what are your thoughts in this space here?
Well, he's definitely prioritizing the cities that need the most help. Like I said, Chicago for 13 consecutive years has led the nation in murders. So that is a crisis. I would understand if people feeling concerned over this if he was entering and trying to deploy the National Guard to cities that were at a moderate pace or were very comparable to other cities. But no, when for 13 consecutive years, murders are leading in a particular area, that is a crisis. And like I said, since January 1st, 150,000 reported crimes, and only 6 of them resulted in arrest. It gets to a point where absolutely we need to start relying on those principles of peace through strength. And, there are very valid remarks regarding the executive branch maybe overstepping, and that's very understandable. However, when children no longer feel safe to go outside, when mothers don't feel safe walking their children to the bus stop because of recent gang violence, those are not American values. That's when we definitely need to step in. And it's very temporary. This is not permanent. It's not like the National Guard are going to relocate and establish themselves in the suburbs of Chicago. It's not true. This is very temporary. And I do believe that the Trump administration should emphasize on that, and they should let the public know, let the media know, hey, this is the time frame, these are our goals. And I think thus far he's been very vocal about it. I believe that the Trump administration does an incredible job at letting the public know exactly what he's thinking, which I think is a blessing. Like you said, how would Texans feel if, President Gavin Newsom, President AOC steps in and they're doing the same thing in Texas? A lot of Texans here don't appreciate crime at all. A lot of Texans here will call out Dallas, will call out Houston. Houston is a big talk here. A lot of Texans wish that crime was checked. And so here on out, Governor Abbott, he's done a pretty good job at it. However, if it got that far, I'm sure Texans would appreciate the help regardless. This isn't about politics.
And I think that, yeah, I think that's a key point there. To me, what surprises me is that, to me, there's almost like a very easy solution here. If you're a mayor and you hold the opinion that the president doesn't have the jurisdiction to come in, but you also have to recognize that you can invite the president and the National Guard to come in. To your point, Chicago, year after year, we hear the stats of everything from robberies to shootings to actual murders. I would think there would be a level of let's work together. I almost would love to see all these mayors, both from blue states, red states, you mentioned Houston, almost come together at the White House, almost hold like a mayor's conference at the White House where they're saying, Mr. President, let's work together. Let's work with our governors. Let's work with your plan. There's something in D.C. that has happened in these last 30 days where crime has gone down. Let's take that as a case study. Let's apply that in their states. Because again, to emphasize one of the points I made earlier, I get it. In some of these states, they're showing that certain stats point to crime being down. But when you look at those numbers, they are still significant numbers. I get it. You can maybe compare it to another stat and say there's less. That doesn't mean it's solved. the family that is dealing with murders, the people who are not safe in their neighborhoods, the kids who can't go out and play or just walk to school. They still care about these issues. That's why I think there's a lot of public support when it comes to these measures that the president is taking. This is why many conservatives are saying this is something that we need, and there's something that's supporting the president. Again, it would be an easy solution because, to Monet's point, I do think the president does have to be mindful of the president that he's sending, because in another 4 years, it won't be a President Trump that we have there at the helm. I do want to move on to the topic, continuing with Trump, but on the topic of cartels. Earlier in the show, or last show that we had, we talked about Venezuela and the situation of how President Donald Trump has zeroed in on Caracas and Maduro. Excuse me, but let's not forget that another key country that the United States has been eyeing is Mexico. Mexico is that border country where fentanyl has come in, where human trafficking has come in, where drugs in general have been coming in. Many of the cartels and the gangs that have been designated as terrorist groups are in Mexico. Not all of them. Some are there in Venezuela. I believe some might be in Nicaragua and in Colombia as well. But many of their homes are in Mexico. Marco Rubio was there yesterday meeting with President Claudia Sheinbaum. A big part of the discussion was tariffs, but also national security. Monet, I want to go to you on this discussion. How important or how key is it that Marco Rubio is there having these discussions with the president of Mexico? Look, there's been a lot of news where it seems like Mexico isn't always on board sort of with some of the, let's call it rhetoric coming out of the White House. But at the same time, President Trump has tweeted that they have had very productive conversations. Marco Rubio yesterday in his press conference said that the government of Mexico, including the president, have been collaborating on this agenda. Do you believe that there is progress going to be made when it comes to our relationship with Mexico, specifically on tariffs and also on drug trafficking?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important. And I think that Marco Rubio being there sets the precedent. It's very public that we're trying to find a healthy relationship. And it's really important that we do. We absolutely need to crack down on cartels. I think that President Trump and Marco Rubio have done this, and they're going to continue letting the president of Mexico know that we're done with the cartels. We're done with the rhetoric that it's our problem to put up with it, and that Mexico needs to take accountability for the crime that has come across our border. So I think we're heading in a really great direction there. But it's also really important that that this hopefully doesn't have to escalate more than it already has, because trade between Mexico and America is really important. We are, one of their biggest partners, and they're one of our biggest partners. So how can we continue a healthy relationship while also making sure that Mexico takes accountability for keeping the crime back, right? It's not our responsibility. These are taxpayer dollars that have consistently, I mean, not even in the last 5 years, for the last 30, 40 years, are going towards having to protect our nation from the cartels that are crossing at our southern border. That is something that Mexico has to take responsibility for. So again, I think that this conversation between Marco Rubio and the president of Mexico is crucial. I'm excited to see what comes out of it. And I really hope that, again, that she can take accountability, and she takes measures in her own country to make her own people safer, to keep the cartels out, to take it seriously. I mean, I'm not going to hold my breath, to be honest. I think that Trump has called her out when necessary, and maybe this conversation will lead to some better outcomes. But again, she needs to take accountability in her own country so that we can have a
Yeah.
better relationship moving forward.
I think there's a little bit of a good cop, bad cop going on between Marco Rubio and President Trump. I mean, President Trump, to one of Angelina's points earlier, he's not afraid to say what he's going to do or what he wants to do. He's very vocal on his agenda. He's very vocal and very direct on what he believes should be the path forward. And I think with Mexico, that's been a key component. With all Latin America in general, in our previous show, again, on the topic of Venezuela, we talked about the MAGA Monroe Doctrine, about how the United States has always looked at Latin America, but in the last probably 40 years hasn't been as strategic. It seems like Donald Trump is changing that a little bit, and it seems that Marco Rubio is playing is a key ally in this space. Again, he's kind of having these conversations in persons with there. Angelina, at the same time that Marco Rubio was visiting Mexico, we see the news come out that there was a boat of 11, what the White House has identified as 11 terrorist drug cartels off the coast of the Caribbean. There's this video where the Department of Defense took the action to take them out. What message does this send that at the time that Marco Rubio is talking with Mexico, again, the nation where there are strong cartel presence, strong drug trafficking. He's there talking about this issue. Venezuela's also on the line, and the administration takes this very decisive action to take out these 11 cartels. In your opinion, what message does this send just to that network of drug cartels in general?
Peace through strength. Several critics, they're criticizing the Trump administration's actions regarding this. However, it's crazy how political differences and just deep hatred toward a political party and a president can make people sympathize with cartels. I never thought I'd see that because, have people forgotten how cartels operate, like what they do, or are they simply clueless in that regard? Because cartels are the ultimate terrorists, especially Tren de Agua. They don't solely traffic drugs. These people, they traffic children. And if you harm children and are en route to America, you are declaring war. And that's point period. As well, it was cartels that have internally destroyed American and Texan life. The Clementine killer, as you mentioned, fentanyl. It was responsible for taking the lives of more than 7,000 Texans since 2019, which was supplied by cartels, smuggled through the southern border during the previous presidential administration. So, as well as harming children, Tren de Agua, they are poisoning our populace. And, moreover, because of their unchecked power, I'm not able to visit my own family, my own relatives that currently reside in Mexico, in Tamaulipas, because there's a travel advisory implemented in their area due to cartel chaos. So ultimately, the Trump administration's recent drone strike, I perceive it as an act of service. Peace through strength. It sent a loud and direct message that, terrorists, cartels that are targeting Americans, that it will be stopped, it will be halted. And, strong, like you mentioned, decisive action. It protects our communities, it protects our border communities as well.
Yeah, it's a very strong message. I think part of the message that individuals like Maduro and those involved in narcotráfico should look at, and the message that they're hearing partly is that the critics of Trump are saying that although there is a declared war, that typically in this case, if the people could have been arrested, that should have been an action, right? The critics are saying, why not arrest these individuals? Why just take them out? So again, to the point is, the strong message here from Trump is, we're not here to play. We're viewing this as an actual war. This is something that has been going on for decades, the trafficking of drugs and of humans. And then when you add fentanyl to the equation, the amount of Americans who have died of overdose of what is a very lethal drug, many times, again, manipulated but by those who are putting this together. The strong message is not just, hey, we're here. The strong message is we're here and we're taking decisive actions in this space. Monea, I want to go a little bit on el otro lado de la moneda, the other side of the coin, on the fact that, yes, President Trump is taking a lot of actions through executive order. What's the role of Congress in all of this? Congress was just in August recess. This is the first week of September. They're back in Congress now. What, in your opinion, should Congress be doing alongside the president when it comes to this topic of drug trafficking, of immigration, of border security? Because it's true, numbers are down of illegal border crossings. There have been many examples from the administration saying that they've obtained tons and tons of drugs that they've intercepted in the Caribbean. But again, many of the actions that the president is taking now, although important, are actions that after 4 years, if Republicans are not in command, would kind of go away. That's where you kind of need Congress. In your opinion, what should Congress be looking at during these next few months to come alongside the president?
Right. I absolutely agree that Congress needs to come alongside the president and support his efforts against the cartels. I think that the actions that the president took One, he should have. It's well within his means to do so. And, when we look at the far left and the rhetoric of, well, due process is for the individuals in America who are subject to its jurisdiction. Unfortunately, the cartels that are harassing not just America, but Central and South America are not subject to our jurisdiction. And Trump had to take action against the cartels. I mean, it's proven that those 11 individuals they had drugs, they were coming to America to cause harm. And so action needs to be taken. Going back to Congress, though, they need to take a look at what needs to be done to protect American citizens, to protect its country. And I don't believe that the ends always justify the means. That's why I'm very hesitant about Trump overplaying his executive power, because like we talked about earlier, what happens when other presidents take over who want to weaponize that power? That's why it's so important for Trump to also work with Congress to hold back on executive power and go, okay, how can we utilize the proper channels of Congress and legislation? It's what the founders set up. It's to protect Americans, right? To make sure that Congress is taking action to protect us through passing laws, and also enabling the president to use the powers, whether it's through taking action with our military to protect our borders and to protect us against these cartels.
Yeah, I believe the president can really make his legacy concrete if he puts a little bit more attention to Congress, or pressure, I should say, to Congress. The reality is he will be remembered for the actions he took in 4 years, but what this country needs are policies that go beyond those 4 years. I am under the impression that one of, not the only, but one of the main reasons why unlawful immigration is down is because the president has sent a clear message to Latin America that we're not allowing folks in, that you will be sent back, that people are being deported, and that the border security will be empowered. Messaging is such a key component, which the administration has done. But again, it could all go away in 4 years. Matter of fact, we saw that. We saw a president that was tough on border security through 2016 to 2020. And then we saw a president from 2020 to 2024 that wasn't. And we saw the complete change. That's why I think the president should begin to pressure Congress a little bit more. He has majority in both chambers, which is going to be challenged next year at the 2026 election. I think in these next few months, it's going to be important for Congress to take swift action. All right, I want to turn our attention now to the news coming around Planned Parenthood, specifically in Louisiana. It's one of the most recent examples where they have said that they are pulling out of Louisiana. They are shutting over 24 facilities. Many of them are losing some federal funding, some state funding, and also just some of the donations that they typically receive to be able to continue. Again, Planned Parenthood, while they will say that there's a long list of things that they focus on, one of the highest numbers, or the thing that most people will focus on, is on the fact that they do facilitate abortions. This has been a place where the pro-life movement has zeroed in again as one of those organizations that really, to some people, pushes those abortions. Hey, Angelina, I want to go with you on this topic. Uh, the fact that this is not something that it's almost somewhat organic. What I mean, they have lost support, they have lost funding. This isn't that the president put a new executive order specifically saying that you can't have Planned Parenthood. In your opinion, what does this mean for the pro-life movement and for those who are in the pro-life arena?
It means that the massive shutdowns of Planned Parenthoods across the nation are true miracles. And I don't speak this solely as a devout Catholic, which I am. I speak this as a Latina because that's who Planned Parenthood targets the most, minorities. There's a reason you don't find abortion clinics in the suburbs. Matter of fact, in 2013 in New York City, more Black children were aborted than born. So truly, as a nation, if we wholeheartedly believe in racial equality and justice, we must ask ourselves these hard questions about how a practice, abortion, which was once rooted and established in reproductive control, how it has evolved and which groups are paying the highest price for that. While many are perceiving the Planned Parenthood shutdowns as a loss of resources, I think it's important that we perceive it in the opposite way, because that's what the pro-life movement, myself, a contributor with Students for Life, is doing. We're perceiving it in the complete opposite way, because it's the opportunity to now allocate these funds and resources from Planned Parenthood to pregnancy resources, to adoption clinics, marginalized mothers. I mean, envision that in America, where instead of tax-funded abortions, we prioritize tax-funded pregnancy and adoption facilities. This is truly a miracle.
Monet, when Roe v. Wade, when the Supreme Court essentially struck down Roe v. Wade, it did create this ripple effect where a lot of states were able to take action. Some took action to solidify, uh, per se, a pro-life approach in their states, while other states went in the opposite direction, where they took votes from the state legislator to empower those who they call pro-choice. Some of these states had to have a referendum where during their election, they had to, the citizens had to go out and vote and decide in which direction they wanted to take their state. This news with Planned Parenthood, in your opinion, does it have the potential to trickle in to the 2026 election? Because part of the funding was that was sort of the defunding of Planned Parenthood came from the One Big Beautiful Bill. This is a key legislation from President Trump and from Republicans. Do you think there's a chance that Democrats kind of grab onto this news, that we'll maybe see more of these next year, and that the topic of pro-life, pro-choice might become a top issue for 2026?
So abortion always is a headlining topic in any election. I don't think that it's going to be one of the major issues, just like in the last election. The economy and border security is what it came down to. I honestly think that the biggest thing that could potentially hurt Republicans in the next election is the economy. Unfortunately, the polling right now is not looking great on that for President Trump. Hopefully that because the One Big Beautiful Bill got passed, because we're rolling back regulations, we'll start to see the economy soar again. But when it comes to the conversation of abortion, when the states started to decide, like you said, the referendums were on the ballots. Most of these states have decided what they're doing. Even Arizona, for an example, on our ballot last time around, that was there. These states have decided what they're going to do, and even though that they want to push this in the headlines, people have decided, whether it's with crime, abortion, you're starting to see the mass exodus of people leaving from states where they don't want to live anymore. Either they do want to live in a left-leaning, hard regulation states, or not, or they want to live in a more pro-life state with less regulations. And so when it comes to the next election, I really think it's just going to come down to, do people have more money in their pockets? Is it easier to start a business? Am I better off than I was, especially 2 years ago? And that's what people are thinking about every midterm. Even though abortion's going to be, top of the headlines, I really don't think that's what people are concerned about when they just voted on it on their ballots, when their states have basically already decided what they're going to do.
Yeah, Angelina, I kind of want to ask you a similar question. You're in Texas. In the last month, a big discussion was the redrawing of the maps. Many people were saying, or Republicans specifically, were saying that they feel confident on the shifts of voters in areas like the Rio Grande Valley, with many Latinos voting Democrats, voting Republican, I would say. What's your opinion? Do you think, when you think of the 2026 election, when you think of Republicans trying to hold on of their majorities in the House and the Senate, what role does the topic of pro-life, pro-choice play in next year's election? What are the other topics outside of this one that Republicans will have to focus on if they want to keep those majorities?
Well, here in the Rio Grande Valley, naturally, we are pro-life. We are 90% Hispanic, and a majority of us are Catholic from our Mexican roots. You can ask numerous homes, you can knock on so many doors, and countless doors that I knocked on in the previous election cycle campaigning. I would ask them, okay, what's your voting record? And they would let me know. Typically, they were Democrat at the time. And I would ask them, okay, so you support tax-funded abortions because that's what your congressman's voting for. And they weren't aware of it. Naturally, Catholics were pro-life people. Hispanics, Mexicanos were pro-life people. And so this issue of abortion definitely did impact the Hispanic community once we were made aware of how it actually is playing out in Congress and where the lawmakers do have authority to legislate it. But a separate issue is the economy, like Monet said. I mean, it's true. Hispanics, we're bread and butter people. At the end of the day, when we come back home, we sit at our table, we're not typically talking about, abortion issues. We're talking about, oh my gosh, did you see how much it cost for me to put gasoline in the truck today? Oh my goodness, when we drove the kids to school, how expensive that already was. Oh my goodness, when we went to the grocery store, how just 3 bags of groceries cost. I mean, at the end of the day, our families, we care about our wallets. We care about putting food on the table for our children, for our homes. And so that's definitely going to be a big dictator for the next election is can we get the economy on a stable track? And can we support our homes altogether? Because right now, like Monet said, polling isn't so great. If we can uplift that, if we can start, bringing energy back into the states, if we can regulate our economy, I do think that with the recent policy changes with tariffs overseas, that will support it. But if we can get that on track, then that will definitely secure the Hispanic vote. But at the moment, that's what it's looking at. That the economy, the cost of living, that's
Hmm.
what's going to dictate the election for Hispanics.
Yeah, the truth is, Latinos are paying attention to all of the above, economy being a top issue, but also the situations when it comes to crime, when it comes to the president's approach with the National Guard, cartels, the role of Maduro when it comes to narco trafficking, but also when it comes to the topic of abortions as well. I want to thank Monet from Arizona, Monet Banks, for being on the show today. Same thing with Angelina Tamez coming in from Texas. Thank you both for being on the show. Again, this has been The Game, the podcast where we go play by play, analyzing the game of politics. We'll see you guys here next time.